So next slide, please. So we still have a role in phase one. First and foremost is coordination with EPA to make sure that they've completed household hazardous waste removal. Secondly, we have to do a site assessment, which is basically the scope for every parcel or TMK or tax map key. That site assessment basically is a site map, documents the debris that's on site and checks for site hazards. We in addition, will also be removing any bulk asbestos that was left by EPA because they have a very limited scope for that. In addition, resource advisors in the form of biologists, archaeologists, and Native Hawaiian monitors are going to assess the site and flag for resources that require protection. That's a critical path that we need to perform prior to debris removal, whether a person opts into the phase two consolidated program or decides to do debris removal on their own. And then finally, at some point, and I think this might be kicking off soon, EPA will apply a tackifier for public health concerns. Next slide, please.
Yeah, wait, before you go to next slide.
This might be kicking off soon. EPA will apply a tackifier for public health concerns.
Tackifier for public health concerns. Really quick. Let's research what a tackifier is. Let's see. T-A-C-K-I-F-I-E-R. Okay, a tackifier. Tackifiers are chemical compounds used in formulating adhesives to increase tack, the stickiness of the surface of the adhesive. They are usually low molecular weight compounds with high glass transition temperature. At low strain rate, they provide higher stress compliance and become stiffer at higher strain rates. Interesting, so it's kind of like a sticky adhesive glue thing that they want to put on there. That's kind of curious. And real quick, before I go to the next page, this one here says site assessment. Number 1, site assessment team prepares site assessment report and site map, documents debris on site and checks for site hazards. Number 2, resource advisors, biologists, archaeologists, Native Hawaiian organization monitors, assess site and flag resources for protection. And then 3, the tackifier will be applied to the properties for dust suppression. Yeah, that just doesn't sound good.
Next slide, please. So during asbestos assessment and abatement, the HAZWOPER or hazardous waste operations trained certified consultants will sample suspect asbestos material. That's sent to a lab. If it comes back as positive, then those materials are removed for disposal. Currently, all household hazardous waste is being disposed of off-island. Next slide, please.
No, hang on a minute. I need to read that real quick here.
Currently, all household hazardous waste is being disposed.
This one here says asbestos assessment and abatement. Number 1, HAZWOPER. Certified consultants assesses debris and collects samples of any suspected asbestos-containing material. Number 2, suspected asbestos-containing material is sent to a laboratory for testing. And number 3, if the laboratory confirms the material contains asbestos, a licensed asbestos removal contractor removes the material under the supervision of the certified consultant. Okay. Seems like a lot of extra paychecks.
Next slide, please. So for the phase 2 process, it begins with enrollment. That enrollment is through a right of entry for each and every property owner or parcel owner. Once enrollment has taken place and EPA has completed phase 1, then the Corps can initiate phase 2 debris operations, which is the second step, phase 2 debris removal. After debris removal of all eligible debris under this program, soil analysis will occur with soil sampling. We'll go into a little bit more detail in a couple of slides on what that entails. And we'll also remove any hazard trees that are eligible for the program. And note that this is a hazard tree versus a hazardous tree. The hazard that comes from these trees is that they are dead or dying and have a potential fall hazard, but they are not termed hazardous under the program that we're removing right now. And that doesn't necessarily have to happen at the end of debris removal. We may have to remove trees for safety of the workers, or they may actually be in the debris stream. And then finally, erosion control will be applied so that runoff does not occur after debris removal has been completed. Next slide, please. So under the Consolidated Debris Removal Program, the Army Corps, USACE, would receive an ROE from the property owners. They basically opted into the program. That is a no out-of-pocket cost for the property owners, and the Army Corps will perform all of those duties from start to finish, with the exception of Phase 1, which is currently being done by US EPA. The alternate program is when a property owner must submit a work plan, an alternate work plan, which is the purpose of the bill that we're discussing today. And that work plan goes to the county for approval and outlines the debris removal plan that in general mimics the Phase 2 program that the Army Corps is performing. So under that, with probably few exceptions, the property owners will have to hire qualified private contractors to complete that. So when you look at hiring asbestos consultants or certified arborists or air monitoring consultants or soil sampling consultants, it's a fairly significant and technical process that will be carried out again by the Army Corps if they opt in, but they would probably have to hire an environmental consultant to perform that on their own. At the bottom, note, for property owners that do not select a debris removal program to remove the existing public nuisance and health hazard, their property may be abated at the director's discretion, and there's language in the bill that specifies that. Next slide, please. During debris removal, as you can see from the slide, there's a heavy equipment operation. The contractor, the Army Corps, and at the property owner's discretion, the property owner will walk the site. They'll determine what is eligible based upon the site assessment that's already been performed. In the ROE process, there is an area where the request can be made by the property owners for specific items to be left. If it is possible to do so, we can work with the contractor to make sure that happens. The crews typically removes metal and concrete and transports them to recycling centers. The intent is to recycle at all possible. Everything that can be recycled will be recycled under this event. The crew removes ash and debris and transports in lined haul trucks. So in essence, we're plastic wrapping and heat sealing all of that material. And that it goes to a TDSR. You see that that's a temporary debris storage and reduction site. That's the acronym TDSR. In this case, we're not probably going to do much reduction. It's going to be that plastic wrap material. And then finally, that would be disposed of in approved landfill that is yet to be determined. So there's still some work to do on where the temporary site will be set up and where the final disposal site will be made. And that is, the Corps is working with Maui County as we speak to determine that. After all of that ash and debris has been removed, the crew will scrape 6 inches of soil from the building footprint, or the eligible footprint, as it were. We don't take all ash. Not all ash contains those structural materials that are inherently or potentially toxic. So that 6 inches of soil is removed. During the entire process, air monitoring will be conducted to make sure that the workers, the wet methods we're employing to knock down dust are working, and that the community is being cared for. I should also like to add that the erosion control, once an ROE is received, is also put in place prior to work, so that there is some protection once folks opt in that will put in barriers to make sure that ash does not migrate off-site. Next slide, please. There's sort of an unprecedented level of demolition that may have to occur during this event. Typically, demolition is not eligible under the PPDR, Private Property Debris Removal Program, from FEMA. But the letter that approved PPDR also approved demolition as indicated by the County of Maui. So again, the Corps or FEMA do not make this determination. Maui County currently has building inspectors going out. And if a building cannot be saved, it will probably be eligible for this program. But just know that that's a little bit different than we normally do. So that's going to require different types of material, different types of equipment to do demolition. In addition to that, we have to follow Section 106 consultation for historic preservation. We're working with FEMA Environmental and Historic Preservation Office, as well as the SHIP D Office, the State Historic Preservation Division, to identify historic buildings that will receive additional review. If those can be saved, we will do our utmost to do so. But if they can't be, and that determination is made by everybody else but the Corps, then they might be eligible for this program and we would remove them. Next slide, please. Soil analysis will occur again after all eligible debris has been removed. Samples are collected from the ash building footprint. Samples are sent to a certified laboratory and analyzed at a minimum for heavy metals. We are working currently with the State Department of Health to determine what sampling is required and the cleanup goals that need to be met for rebuild. And that's the key part of this is the intent is to get back to rebuilding. So working with the State Department of Health as well as the Building Commission, we're making sure that folks can actually get back and rebuild into their homes. So we're working through that process. That has not been finalized, but those same requirements would hold for the private debris removal program or the alternate program. Sample results are, again, compared to those health screening levels as appropriate. And if those results are higher than those screening levels, an additional 6 inches of soil will be taken. Under the approval that the Army Corps received from FEMA and that went to the state, and that additional 6 inches of soil is the maximum limit of excavation for this event. So a maximum of 12 inches of soil will be removed. Previous studies from the state of California have shown that the initial 3 to 6 inches of soil is the impacted soil by a fire event. So this is a safeguard to go an additional 6 inches of soil deeper. There's other reasons why we don't want to excavate, mainly because of the cultural sensitivity. We don't want a huge excavation for these properties. So we'll have to go through that process, and that may be case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. As we discussed, hazard trees will be removed during this event. Trees along public roads and infrastructure are assessed by an arborist to determine if they're dead or dying, and a hazard tree, by definition, will die within 5 years as stated by an arborist. So there's other criteria that need to be met, but in general, those trees should be and will be taken under this event unless we are given information otherwise. If Maui County identifies certain trees, homeowners identify certain trees, they will be saved if they can, but in some cases, we won't even be able to go on the property until those trees are removed. That removal process is performed by a licensed operator from the state of Hawaii. Next slide, please. After work has been completed, the trees have been removed and the structural ash and debris have been removed. Proper erosion control measures will be placed on the property. A stormwater pollution prevention plan, just like any other large construction project, will be in place and will be enforced. Final inspection is conducted to confirm that all work has been performed, and at that point, we will send Maui County a letter stating that the work has been performed to the restrictions and requirements of this program. And at that point, Maui County can start discussions with the property owners about rebuild, about insurance costs, and things like that. And that is the end of our involvement, and we have returned the right of entry so that the Army Corps and the federal government do not have rights or access to that site. However, we will be leaving in place those stormwater controls, so those will become the responsibility of the property owner at that time. Next slide, please.